We are now live on Facebook, take 2. And I'm here with these awesome humans. I'm just checking that this is also coming up just because I stuffed it up last time. Jess Palmer, Nicole Gibson, Matthew Liam Gardner, Shan Major, absolute awesome humans, entrepreneurs, and very, very interested in this discussion on leadership. Now, Jess Palmer organised this discussion and I'm facilitating it. So I might, have you introduce that. We've all gotten together and talked about what we really want to provide today. I'm going to have some of your comments, guys, flash up on the screen. So please, it's across 4 channels. So anyone that is posting in, some of your comments will come up with your name, some won't. But please do leave any comments, anything you'd like to contribute to this conversation, any questions as well, because this is a Q&A. We would love your thoughts. But Jess, why don't you introduce, why you wanted to have this topic? It's such a privilege to facilitate this topic with you guys too.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for facilitating all of it, Jess. Jess has honestly been doing all the background stuff. I just did a post, which I'm going to share with you guys what that post was in a second. But yeah, Jess, you've been driving behind this. So thank you so much. I'm also really grateful that, we have these amazing leaders. You guys are on here as well to speak into this leadership conversation. So what I'm going to talk about, one, our purpose and our intention for this conversation. So to be honest, it's a full exploration of all things leadership, and it's going to go where it wants to go. So it's going to be interesting. The second thing is that how we actually came about creating this is that I did a post and it sparked some controversy. It was around judgment and the coaching industry. And we were having these beautiful, healthy debates. And it was really beautiful and admiring to see these different, opinions being shared, which is what we actually get to do. We get to have these difficult, courageous conversations because they are necessary for progress. So that's really what we're here. We're here to progress. I don't even know what I'm saying that word. It's funny. We're here to really facilitate progress when it comes to leadership and kind of speak into what we're seeing, what we're feeling, and also what we're hearing from you guys. And please sound off in the comments if you have any questions or, you have some call outs around this topic, because we want everyone to be a part of this conversation too.
Yeah. And if you guys want to share this, it's your opportunity to share this on your page as well. If you want to share this with yours, it's live on across my channels. But yeah, it's your opportunity to share this. And I love what you just said then, Jess, as well. When you said, you're just calling this out. I think you see something. And we could go into introductions around who you are, but if you want to quickly introduce yourself when you speak, so people know just the kind of, I just want to say who we've got on this discussion are some real people out to impact things globally and can speak to things that are really important right now. But we want to spend time talking about the individual here. We want to spend the time talking about this actual topic. So you can introduce yourself and say a little bit about it if you want to talk, but what are these things that are happening globally that you can see are even showing up in Facebook posts, in things that people are doing that what do you really want to say, Jess, about that?
Well, before we get into this whole conversation, I think it would just be I just wouldn't feel right without obviously saying what is happening in the world right now. We can't pretend have this conversation and pretend that something's not going down right now. So I just want to acknowledge what is happening and what that is doing as well when it comes to leadership. It's allowing us to challenge leadership and to allow people to find their voices, but it's highlighting the areas that are unseen, the areas that are avoided for many different reasons. There's so much talk. There's all these posts going on. My one was about my post was about judgment. It was if if you're hating, you're not creating, focus on creating, let's not be judgmental. Of course, we need to use our discernment, which I'm sure Shan will speak into. But as per the post, but there's a lot that is happening and we don't know how to talk about it. Sometimes it's scary to talk about it when it comes to the coaching industry. And then again, on different levels. So when it comes to the justice system, when it comes to ethics, like that's something that's really, Matt, you're so passionate. You've got so much to say about that. And I'm looking forward to hearing it as well. But basically, I just feel like there's an unveiling right now and we get to call out what leadership is and what we feel leadership isn't. We can talk about the ways that have not served us and how it's placed us at the point that we are at right now on a local and global scale. Because really what's happening on a global scale is just a mirror reflection of what is happening in our own backyards. We just don't see it because perhaps we're choosing not to see it, or we genuinely are living in a bubble and we've never been exposed to it. And then there's also this level of frustration, which I'm also experiencing, this deep level of frustration, where the people that have been speaking up or people that are experiencing injustices and things like this, they've been wanting to be heard for so long. And now they're having to, it's almost like they're having to educate people on how to hear them out. And I'm kind of that's making me feel a certain way right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, this is about unveiling, calling out what's happening globally, and having people who want to speak out and have a voice, without kind of being questioned for even having one.
I don't think it's about questioning, about having a voice. I think it's just really speaking into what's real. Like, Can we please just have real conversations? Can we include people in conversations, whether we agree or disagree? It doesn't actually matter whether we agree with each other or we disagree. But if we have this collective intention to continue to help the world be a better place, because that's ultimately what we're all here to do, is to help make the world a better place for every person. And every person should have the opportunity to speak up, and every person should have the opportunity to feel safe in whatever environment, whether that is a prison system, and I can speak to that on a personal level, which I can tell you guys about later, or whether this is, in a teaching environment, or maybe it's in a relationship environment. Regardless of the environment, there's just things that we need to talk about, and it's just, this is a time for change. And I feel like the people on this chat right now, you guys are the ones that are like really here to lead the change and to help be the voice, so that people who are saying, hey, I noticed this and I want to speak to this, but I'm too afraid, I'm scared I'm going to be judged if I speak up and share my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't want people to feel, you go.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I love exactly what you're saying. And I think it's perfect to open it up, actually, and go, Matt, Shan, I'm like, what are those things that you want to talk about? What are those things that you want to say? What those voices, I don't think we're ever going to get an opportunity to always feel safe, to be honest. But this is a safe space to have conversations that maybe people want to, that don't feel safe. So what are those potentially? I don't know. What do you guys want to say about that, Shan, Matt?
Well, I'll start by saying that one of the things that I started to see through my own personal journey was this matrix in self-development that was completely wrapped up in self-serving, but dressed up in the eyes of we're doing this for humanity, we're doing this for the collective. And it was really just so much ideology laced in attention seeking, how much money we're making each month, how we can get the most followers, how we can seek the most pleasure, how we can just feel really good and feel really positive. And underneath, I just started to feel this like shaming of humanness. And also like everyone's agenda just got so wrapped up in like, how can I climb the spiritual pyramid scheme? And it just got so lost and so distorted. And you know, I got caught up in it too, until I fell into my shame spiral of, well, I don't want to play this game. Like, this doesn't feel fruitful. It doesn't feel fulfilling. Like, I don't actually give a fuck how much money I make a month. Like, actually, what I care about is being connected to faith and to being protected enough that I can follow my heart and be provided for.
Yeah.
And that to me is abundance. And I just started seeing all of these courses and just attention directed to how we can basically puff ourselves up, become invulnerable, become impenetrable. Oh, and if you can't, then that's some failure on you. Do another course, go to another retreat, because you clearly don't have your shit together. And this to me just feels so distorted. And
is it? Sorry.
I just want to say as well, if we're not coming from a place of service, of inspiration, of devotion, and anything that we're putting out there or any attention we're trying to gain, which is laced in validation, money, indulgence, it's like, it's not serving anyone. It's actually just concealing the hungry ego that doesn't know how to be okay with itself, sourcing itself.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's really great that you say this, because I wonder about it. I teeter on the line for this myself, right? I'm like, am I doing, and I know that sometimes what I do is attention seeking. I'm like, okay, maybe that was a bit attention seeking. And then at times I go, actually, no, I have this real mission to include what it is to actually have 8 billion people expressed in the world, just as they are. And is a part of it actually being egotistical sometimes, needing to be that way, notice the reaction, and then go, oh, that didn't work. And how do we do that? And not end up then separating ourselves more, because then we do it and we're not perfect, and then people go, I'm out with them. You know, Nicole, do you want to speak to that? Is there anything, or there's anything you want to say in this discussion right now? You look totally enthralled. Have I got you on? Oh, yes. Okay, good.
Am I good? Am I unmuted?
You are. You're full.
I just first want to really take a moment just to acknowledge the traditional owners on all of the lands in which we're meeting right now, especially with everything that's going on in the world. I think this conversation about leadership, and at the forefront of what I really feel the planet needs is mission. I feel very heartbroken today. I've actually felt very heartbroken in the past few days. Just wanting so badly to do more for the planet, and do more for the world. And I think that begins when we drop opinions. I think it begins when we understand that leadership is an assignment. And there's a pretty massive assignment on the planet right now. I don't feel like Australians in particular are very informed. And I think that creates, and I know that's an opinion, and it's an opinion that's come from working with many Australians and working in the Australian political system as well. And I think with that comes an ability to glorify the things that are not worthy of glorification, and lack perspective in the bigger scheme of what's needed in leadership around the world. I think we're really seeing nationalism in a different way right now. And I don't know if I would consider coaches leaders. I would consider leaders people that are willing to respond, not be invested in their own agenda. Leaders are responsive, and the world's in a fuck ton need of that right now. So that's where I'm at in this conversation.
Yeah, no, I get it. How do you discern that? How does someone discern the difference between someone going out there and really clear for them that that's their message and what they stand for and their purpose and they're making a difference? There's a whole lot of crap. Sorry, that's an opinion. There's a whole lot of stuff about more money you make. Sorry, you're a bit jolty. I can't hear you, Nicole. Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, it's very easy to see when someone is acting in self-interest. I believe. And one thing I've learned in leadership, like I learned this a lot when I was on the mission, you know, like there's a lot of different positions that people are going to be fighting for their individual agendas. And I think what is a rarity these days is to see someone who is holding a space for unity and togetherness. And I think that that's very apparent, and perhaps I'm ignorant in believing that that's something that can be easily identified. I guess some of the ways in which you can begin to discern that is, you know, the use of inclusive language would be one. What is the leader speaking to? Is it relevant inside of a context, or is it self-serving? Is it about what they're gaining? Is it about the lifestyle that they've been able to create? Are they selling the idea of happiness, which is really no different to Coca-Cola? Or are they actually responding to what's needed in the world right now? And I think this is particularly raw for me today. Like I feel frustrated being an Australian this week. And the conversations that are taking place amongst the leaders that I believe in very much in Europe and America versus leaders in Australia.
Do you want to talk about that?
There's
like what they are?
Just a lack of information, and I suppose an absence of perspective. I think in Australia there's so much media bias that you really have to go out of your way to stay informed. But I think that I would go as far to say that that's a responsibility. It's not a nice to have, it's a responsibility if you want to call yourself a global leader. I think it's very important.
Would you say, because media bias seems to be everywhere. I mean, I don't know that there's a country that doesn't leverage their media as a way to influence people. And it's like, well, what are they influencing, right? And that can sometimes be the biggest grapple, is that it's like, what do I believe? What if this is completely made up? But then you kind of look and go, isn't that the same online? In my own family, in my own community? Who do I trust? Who do I believe? And what is it to lead that conversation? How do people actually discern day to day this stuff? Because there's so many messages coming through, and the
only way that you can discern this is when you are willing to look beyond yourself. The reason that these coaches that you're referring to can be glorified is because everyone is wanting what they have. But when an individual starts to transcend the self and understands that we're a part of a bigger tapestry, and especially if you're in a position of privilege, so much so that you might not be aware of your privilege, that's how within the privilege you are, and that's how sheltered you are. And we're all guilty of that in so many ways. I think the first step is to make a declaration of your own insignificance. Is number one. Hey, I humble myself. I don't know it all. you know, please forgive me for my ignorance. One of the things that I talk a lot about within the Love Out Loud community is we need to forgive each other's ignorance. We need to forgive each other's ignorance, and we need to become teachers to each other, because there are things that we're all going to get caught up in from time to time, and that they're just rabbit holes. You know, it's not real in the context of leadership, sustainable leadership. Anyway, like a house built on cards is a house built on cards. The other piece of discernment I'll say is if something is getting built very quickly with no groundwork and no grunt work, I guess, you know, that the hard work, then it's going to fall. Like, you've got to put in the work. I served communities for almost a decade before I started this movement, and that gave me the ability, you know, to understand that there's a lot that I don't know. It gave me the humility to understand my own privilege. It gave me the humility to understand that people can only heal when there's a space of non-bias. These are lessons that I learned through doing the work. I didn't wake up one day and decide I'm going to be a leader. I earned that. You know, I think that there are things in life that we need to earn. One of them is leadership. The other is our soul. I believe we need to earn our soul. And I think that's taken for granted.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
Cool. And Matt, we haven't heard from you yet. Is there anything you want to add to this? I mean, the thing that's there for me as you're talking to this, Nicole, and I'm sort of facilitating, but also I really like this discussion, so I feel like I want to talk to it. Is, you know, exactly what you're saying, Nicole. Does our own, sometimes when we have, I'm just curious, and I'm actually going to throw this over to Matt. So I'm going to ask you a question and then throw it to Matt, which is really fun.
I'll answer for Nicole. No worries.
That's all right. And it's sort of talking about sometimes that we can do the work ourselves, and you can see so much that's going on, and you can kind of you've gone through this own transcending of your own ego, and you've been through it, and you can see then when people are doing it, and then then the trap is, do you end up becoming a guru because you see it, and then be like, now what I'm doing is now judging you for everything. Right? And then it's like this trap, right? I just wanted to, you know, how do you make sure that if you are embedding yourself in all this leadership and you are doing all this work and you are standing for things, that it doesn't end up becoming another ego trip that you know better? How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, first of all, Jess. You have to always tell the radio host, it's a great question. It's a good place to start.
Thank you. It's good for my ego.
It buys you 20 seconds to answer it. No, so the conversation that I have with myself and with anyone who wants to engage with me in the conversation is what do I ask of my political leaders? Like, what do I ask of decision makers or the people at the round tables that's actually making profound decisions for my whole community, my whole global community, my local community? Like, what do I ask of them, or what do I really desire of that form of leadership? And I just believe that if we can't do it, if we can't, you know, kind of move into this version of leadership, or this ascended version of leadership where there's like a conscious understanding, where we're committed to vulnerability, where we're committed to not saying I have the answers, but rather this is what I currently know, and I'm ever unfolding as I continue to learn it all. And then we genuinely, as, you know, leaders, which for me is really just being a human ignited in their essence, whatever their unique essence is, if we can genuinely look in the mirror and continue to ask ourselves, like, what's real here? What's real here? And, you know, I have a mentor. I had a mentor, and, you know, of all the giants whose shoulders I get to stand on, one of the things that this giant's words sticks with me, the words that he said were, what got us here won't get us there. And so for me, this is the frame of, like, whatever I've got right now, however much is landed with me right now, whatever like ancient philosophical teachings are landed here, whatever practice through 15 years of coaching or leadership or, you know, different versions of entrepreneurialism is here with me, whatever all of that is, great. And now where to? Like, and now where to? And what haven't I uncovered? And what's an even deeper truth as I come to understand myself as this, like, you know, spiritual, energetic being here in a biological body, constantly uncovering myself more and more. And I think that what I want to see from leaders, and what I'm committed to myself and have done so fucking imperfectly, but I'm just committed to continue to lean into this, is to ask myself, like where to from here? What's true now? What's deeper now? And that's why conversations like this for me they're really beautiful, because it shows that wherever we're at individually as, you know, leaders, wherever we're at in our journey, we're actually here opening to this conversation of like, okay, what if we didn't know it all? You know, what if, like for me, what if the personal development, spiritual world that was the very thing that was my original, you know, savior, or it kind of lifted me out of a reality and introduced me into a whole new way of being and living? What if even in the philosophies that were fundamental to my very expanding, my very opening, what if they were just the philosophies that got me here? And now I got to really question, like, what's deep, even more deeply true to me now? And so, yeah, this has been my journey, and this has been like a really deep part of my questioning over the last 6 months of awakening and, you know, like inwardsness that has come with this kind of magical, horrible, beautiful time on earth. And so what, you know, your question's about like, what do we want from these leaders? And it's the question really is, what are we prepared to do ourselves? Where are we prepared to go ourselves? And because if we can't, who can?
Absolutely. And I think it's actually perfect to go into the, you know, someone just said that, you know, you need to walk the talk, or it's just ego, you know, that's sort of the difference. And then there's this balance. It's like, I know from my own experience is that, and we sort of talked about the idea of misconduct, and calling things out and what's ethical and what's not ethical. And, you know, Nicole, just talk to, you're really heartbroken today. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, except I imagine it's what's happened over in America. And it potentially, I could be making it up, but it's like connecting to this human being that just died for no reason. And is that what you're really referring to? Like that impacted you?
I mean, that's
part of it.
Of course. There's the beginnings of the Civil War in the States. I don't know. Like, let's.
Yeah.
If we don't want to go into that, let's not go into that. But it's really speaking to where we're at, you know, as a humanity. And again, like, responsiveness is the best way forward. And until people are willing to really like challenge their views on things, nothing will change. There's a lot of people that are still asleep. I think there's as well that needs to be made between personal development, because personal development, you know, it's not necessarily leadership. I think where leadership starts to come into gear is when you start talking about social impact. And I think there's a big distinction that maybe needs to be made there. That is it time perhaps for the ever-growing industry that is personal development? And I'm not sure. I've never really seen myself as someone that worked within personal development. I was working in the industry of mental health before I started doing what I'm doing now. But personal development, I think maybe there's an evolution that's required into understanding how one can transcend the development of the self into a more collective mind, you know, and social conscience.
Yeah. And so just picking up on what you said, right, about it really takes people looking at themselves and being willing to change their own views, right? Whose views are we changing into? If we're going from one to another, or if we're going from here to there, you know, if you just picking up on that, and also what you said about personal development, you know, personal development, training, education seems to be getting quite a lot of traction online, right? At least in my circles, I'm a part of it. So, you know, it seems to be getting a lot of traction. So in that sense, and this is probably like, I'd love to have you all talk at once, like that would be ideal. But Jess, you know, how do you reconcile all of this? The what's happening globally, the personal development, the people putting things out there and maybe they're not even walking the talk, it's ego, it's is this real? How do you reconcile all that?
Well, the first thing is I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm not too sure yet. The second thing is that the only thing that I feel that I can truly do to create change is to, one, take responsibility for myself, but two, to actually focus on how I'm going to create change, because I spent a lot of time and like this week, because emotions are so heightened, I am slightly in that emotional state where like I'm angry, like I am. I'm really angry. I'm frustrated. I'm emotional. I've been crying every day about this shit. I've been feeling really ragey. Like, I'm just going to be super real with you guys. Like, when people are posting about, oh, hey, can someone, I want to acknowledge my white privilege. I'm actually being really challenged as a leader to go, I don't, like, I'm just going to say exactly what I'm thinking. I kind of don't give a fuck about how you feel about your white privilege. What I care about is the change that you're going to do. Like, how are you going to be part of change? Like, stop telling me how you're feeling about your white privilege and asking for people to come and educate you. And then it's humbling me as a leader, because then there's a part of it where it's like, okay, well, actually, if somebody's asking to be educated, then I have to humble myself and go, what tools and resources can I provide to this person that has said, I am willing to learn? But then there's also this battle, this internal battle that I'm feeling where I'm like, again, like I really don't give a fuck about how this is making you feel about your white privilege. What I care about is who's dying and what is the actual change. And the people that I'm seeing posting this in my feed are people that call themselves leaders, that talk about radical responsibility. Radical responsibility is when you take ownership for your own education. You will travel to the other side of the world to find a fucking shaman that does this and X and Y, Z. But the minute that this happens, I'm beginning to really question, you're saying you don't know how to educate yourself and you're asking for education? It's called Google. It's called you're muting me, Jess. That's all right. Yeah, it's just, for me, it's, you are so, I just feel like there's some bullshit going on where we're saying, we're posting all these things, and like, I know, like, I'm even getting really heated, and there's probably things where like I'm touching, you know, I'm crossing the line, like, because I really am feeling this. And like, I literally have got to the point where last night I was like, all right, what's my plan? In 2 years' time, two of my kids will be at school. I'll be scaled. My business will be scaled. I'm going to go and study law and become a human rights lawyer. I started looking into scholarships and all these things, because I'm like, I just think if you're going to say, and again, hormonal, clearly, but if you're going to say that you want to create change and that you want to learn, take responsibility. It is not a Black person's problem to educate you on how to treat them. Like, what even the fuck is that? Like, it really upsets me. So you can see I've been feeling a certain way. And again, this just comes back to the leadership conversation that we're having, which is about integrity. Like, if you tell me who you are, then be that person. But it's not about telling me who you are. Like, show me who you are as a leader. Show me your leadership. I don't care about what you're telling me about your leadership. Show me your leadership. And that's the type of leadership that I want to see. And I know that I'm a fucking mess right now.
Good.
I genuinely really care.
It's beautiful. This is what's real, babe. And I really honor you for being able to share it like that. And actually show people this is what's real. This is leadership. It's not hiding the shit or pretending that you've got to be some bulletproof human.
I was saying as well earlier on about, even something simple as like the sales process, like how manipulative the coaching industry is when it comes to the sales process. Like, you're breaking people down so that they think that they need you. They don't need you. They can have a desire to consume what it is that you have to offer. That is your job, to guide them. Your job is not to just take their money. And that's what I see in the industry, is people that they just use this manipulative language to just sell to people, to just take their money. And then when they stop taking their money, they don't really care about them after that. It's like they're disposable and they were just a statistic. And like, I'm just not okay with that.
Yeah. And I don't think we ever should get okay with that. And I think you're actually getting to the part that I'm like just wanting to jump into, which is the misconduct and the unethical practice. Like, when we see this stuff, what do we do? How do we deal with that? I mean, people would judge or potentially have an opinion of, I'm going to post this thing online to kind of pick at it, and that I'm thinking it, that I'm talking to you, but how else do you deal with it, knowing that things are happening that don't work? What we're pointing to here just is that potentially in this coaching industry, or any industry really, but online space, that people are using some of these strategies to kind of, like you said, convince them, I'm the guru, buy my stuff. If you don't, there's something wrong with you, and kind of positioning them in a place of what is already existing in the world, which is you need to be a particular way to be wanted and needed. Or that's just my language for it. Like, what do you
Can I say
do?
something?
Please, Shan.
Like, all of this, what's happening with the injustice, the racism, it all comes down to unequal power dynamics. Okay, and that feeds back into the coaching industry and who we go to for spiritual guidance. So whenever we're playing into this power play of, I have something you need, I'm going to convince you, or even in the way we market ourselves, the language that we use, if we are trying to position ourselves as some kind of glorified know-it-all who should be listened to without question, like, this is what feeds back into this. Like, it's all connected.
Absolutely. And I think that's my biggest concern. I'm like a guru emitter. If anyone even strikes me a little bit like a freaking guru, I get really concerned. And when I've ducked under the covers of that, I really want you to talk to this, Matt. Like, when we duck under the covers and we see things that are happening, or people talk about things that are happening that are not working, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I mean, instead of answering how I deal with it, I might present like some of my experiences, and that might provide a deeper context for this. So, there's for whatever reason, there is a community of people who trust me, and they trust me and have a gentle, like, open love to me and a vulnerability with me, and I take it really seriously, and I have a real deep respect for that. And part of the experience with this is that I'll have, like, for some reason, I'm one of the people, or the person, I don't know how it plays out, where people will come to me and speak to me about their experience of injustice in healing. You know, they might have gone to a healing session with someone and had an energetic healing, and at the end of the healing, the man that's healing, like doing this healing with this woman, will, while she's open and fully surrendered, he'll actually have sex with her. Like, he'll kind of, like, you know, at the end of a healing session, an energetic opening session, it's not, and I've actually had multiple people, about different people, come to me and name these things. And I'm not, you know, it's a really unique experience to have this trust and this, like, look, there's no accountability, there's no transparency, there's no board to go to speak to this that people are aware of anyway, right? Beyond maybe a legal system.
Yeah, that's called sexual assault.
Well, and that's kind of like part of the conversation, right? And so, you know, and just presencing not how I responded to that, but just presencing this is a thing, and then also presencing and other examples of, you know, I'm aware of coaches who have people do mushrooms, and then they'll pitch them while they're actually in the experience to work with them in a different, in a journey or something like that. And so they're in this old, like, you know, pitching someone in an altered state. And there's, you know, I've probably had between 12 and 20 of people coming to me just in the last 4 months to speak up around these things. And it's, so I kind of seeing, like, some of the underbelly, if that makes sense, some of the underbelly of this reality. And, you know, this isn't like people on the other side of the world. This is like in my community, like in the community I've been living in, with people that I've been having coffee with. And even if it is on the other side of the world, even if it is, like, there's no removal. There's, like, you know, that's a part of my reality as well, and part of all of ours. And so this is, like, these things exist. They exist. And so, you know, I feel like, and part of the, like, you know, just part of that, like, the judgment conversation for me has been, like, it's almost less about the word judgment. It's more about, like, I just want transparency, and I want to be able to have the conversations, and I want people to know where to go when this happens. I want leaders and healers to actually be accountable for how they show up in their leadership, because our voices are listened to, and right now the world is listening. And so we have to really have a deep reverence for what we say and the energies that we hold. And yes, we're imperfect, but, you know, I'm not here to get revenge or anything. It's not about that. It's about now that we're here, where do we go? And so, you know, it's part of this. It is part of this community where, you know, I know coaching is a part of the theme here this evening, because there's kind of sprinkles of that element through this screen. And, you know, like, you know, where do we go where in a world where, you know, coaches are kind of being activated into non-regulatory boards and that sort of thing. And it's kind of a deeper, you know, like, beginning coaches kind of activating, but without any accountability. And they're just kind of working it out for themselves, but they're just where they're at. And you know what I'm saying? Like everyone's doing the best they can. Even the, you know, you call it the offenders, they're just kind of where they're at. And still we need to have the conversations. And yeah, this is kind of like I'm rather than giving you an answer, Jess, I'm kind of saying, like, this is a thing. This is real. If I'm getting 12 to 20 in 4 months, like this is running rampant, you know, like this is a really big thing in our global community. And again, for me, it comes back to this question of, like, if we can't work out these pieces, like, then how are in a way that's integrated and holds like victim, offender, or even if it's a case of me, like us not being the people who, you know, speak to the community, like, what is the path? And so I'm kind of coming forward here more being like, cool, like, what are we going to do, rather than I have the answers.
Yeah, no, I think it's a perfect question. And look, let's be real. If we can't work it out, being people that have these conversations and are connected to it, then how is anyone else gonna? Realistically, for me, I want to see a place where we transcend, like you said, the victim and offender thing. And we don't keep that conversation going that is already existing in the world, which is, yes, it's sexual assault. That needs to be dealt with. But let's vilify, shame, and humiliate the person that did it into such submission that who knows what impact that is, and then it keeps separation of human beings anymore together still, right? And that, I mean, personally, I want to see, how do we deal with it? How do we hold each other so that we can encourage each other to go call this stuff out properly and appropriately, but not have to shame, vilify, and humiliate someone who's an offender? They need to be dealt with, and it's not okay. Nicole, do you want to speak to that?
Okay.
Okay.
What do I want to say to this? The first thing I'll say is demonstration is the most non-violent way to call something out. When you're demonstrating integrity, then everything that's not integrity will become very clear. I was actually having this conversation with a beautiful friend of mine this morning, sharing that there's not enough leaders around what's happening in the world at the moment that are standing for unity, and oppression is happening on both sides. So when there's no leader that's standing for unity, there's no demonstration of what unity looks like. There's no demonstration of what love and compassion look like. It's difficult for a mainstream to know how to choose that when it's not being demonstrated to them. So that's the first thing I'll say on that, is demonstration is the fastest way of being able to pave that new path and get rid of the debris that's in the way of truth, integrity, alignment to love and compassion as a world. That's what I work for every single day. The other thing I'll say is I'm a very big believer in learning to love those who hate us. And that's work that shouldn't be underestimated, what that actually takes to open your heart to people that have oppressed you, people that hate you, people that have prejudice against you and bias towards you. I think if you've ever been a part of a minority, perhaps you can feel what I'm saying a little bit more, and what that actually takes. And I definitely have a perspective that we need to be able to not see the separation. We need to stop seeing us and them. And I remember I was actually sharing with the same friend this morning that I had the privilege of going and working on Elko Island a few years ago. It's one of the few Indigenous communities that isn't fully governed by Western law in Australia. It's an island off the Pee-wee Islands. And their way of life was so inspiring to me. You know, one of the conversations I had the honor of having with one of the aunties there, she said to me, you know, we recognize that healing is also the healing of your people, because your people are still in denial. They haven't even realized that there is a problem yet. So the amount of shame and oppression and violence that still exists within the consciousness of your people, there's a brutality that they're going to need to come to terms with that they haven't even accepted exists yet. And what she was explaining was she was understanding that in order for her people to heal, my people need to heal also. And that was her desire and her intention, that we heal together. And we need to be able to open our hearts to that. And I think this happens the second that you lay down your weapons and you say, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about my opinion. It's not about my bias. It's not about my agenda. It's about humanity, and it's about the future of our planet. And it's about, you know, there's multiple agendas that are being fought over right now on the planet, like world agendas. And I don't believe any timeline yet is clear. I think we're very much in the breakdown still. And just fucking please, if you're watching this, just please stop with preoccupations that are taking you away from actually awakening yourself. leaders that don't have the right intention only have power because you're assigning your power over to them. That's the only reason anyone has power. Power is assigned. When you recognize that, when you understand how to awaken yourself, when you open your own hearts to love and forgive people that you see as separate to you or different to you. Charles Darwin talked about this in his earliest paper that was never published, by the way, called The Theory of Artificial Barriers. And he was a botanist. I actually believe Darwin was hugely humanitarian. It wasn't his fault the banks only decided to publish the paper Survival of the Fittest and none of his other work. But the paper that he wrote before that, which came from his study of botany, explored this idea of artificial barriers in human beings. And he studied nature for a very long time. And what nature showed him was that nature's only ever seeking a return and a reconciliation with itself. It's a beautiful, perfect cycle that is always happening. And then he looked at humans and he recognized that human beings create artificial barriers, race, gender, nationalism, probably the greatest example of this, that create a sense of it's okay to dehumanize you because you're different to me. It's okay to make you less human because you're different to me and my people. And I'm not going to see you as a brother or sister because of your skin color, because of your race, because of where you're located in the world, because of how much money you have. That gives me a right to see you as less than. This is supremacy, right?
Yeah.
What Darwin explored was that a part of our evolutionary trajectory has to be the breakdown of these artificial barriers. And he even talked about what he called evolutionary defects, where it looks like for a period of time we're actually evolving backwards. He cross-examined this in the behavior of nature. And just when you see entropy, for example, in nature, what it's showing is there's actually this section which detracts so that there's enough leverage to move forward, to break down, to smash open an artificial barrier. And I know that we're seeing this on the planet right now. We're breaking down the rest of our artificial barriers. What breaks my heart is, do we really need to go through another fucking war? Do we have to go through, how many generations need to see this before we recognize, we need to stop needing to learn this way. We don't have to evolve like this. We can choose love. We can choose a compassionate approach, but we need to look within ourselves and we need to take responsibility for things that are really hard, and we need to transcend ignorance. We need to become informed. There's a different war that's coming out right now, but it is so an evolutionary inevitability that we return to oneness. We have to return to oneness eventually. We're all walking each other home. One of my favorite quotes. We're all walking each other home. But what is the journey going to look like?
Yeah. And Shan, you look like you want to jump. Yeah, you both look like you want to jump in. Go for it.
I'd love to jump in, and just because it's real and raw, I kind of experience you a lot, Nicole, as always actually taking the guru model. I experience you as always having the answer and never having the question, if that makes sense. And so I feel like I kind of, even in this space, and I love you to pieces, and I even really look up to your really key pieces of how you play life. But I still feel this guru, I have the answer energy. And I feel like it's even in this call here, we can't get to cool. Okay, so what don't we know? What isn't here? And I just feel like that's just reinforcing the very thing that we're talking about. And that's my vulnerable, just speaking to what's real for me right now. I'm I'd much prefer to hear and play around in where we're going and working together and creating the questions together to answer together, rather than just having me putting forward the questions and then just having this is how it's this piece. So and just fully acknowledging that that's not the gentlest thing to kind of bring into this space, and but it is what I'm experiencing, and it's also part of why I haven't bought into the Love Out Loud model either. I love what Love Out Loud stands for, but I haven't really been called to it because of that piece.
Well, we're all entitled to our opinions, man. It's no problem. I'd like to understand what about my perspective in the conversation are you finding definitive. I feel like I'm being very explorative and raw with what I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah, just purely that, like, the frequency of this is the answer versus the frequency of we don't know the answer. Like, let's work it out together.
I do know that unity and forgiveness and love is the healer. I do know that.
And I think, I mean, that's what this discussion is about, right? This is a leadership discussion about people who actually have these are the things that we want to call out, right? And that, what do I want to say here? What do I really want to say? That potentially what I can hear, Matt, is for you that any kind of indication, and I know I do this myself, any indication of an answer is actually, that's the experience of it's like being a guru. So you know how you just said then, Nicole, like it is, this is the answer. I tend to agree with you, to be honest. I don't actually think that Matt disagrees, but it is the kind of, and I'm curious as well, like is it the way that we talk about it as leaders is so imperatively important. Like, I don't think anyone out there disagrees that this is the answer, that there's bliss, joy, high vibration, all of that is actually possibly the answer to having a great life internally. However, is it the way that we talk about it? Like, if we go out there and say, guys, you just need to do this and everything would be better. If we say that, even though it's true, is that what it is to experience being a guru? Like, is that the thing that kind of lands for people? Is it? I don't know. Jess, Nicole, jump in.
I'm feeling a little bit of a way right now. One second. What I want to know is, I'm trying not to project my opinions in this moment.
Everyone else is. Why don't you?
Because I want to be better. That's why. So I'm really, focused on moving from a place of, I guess, just saying things and being righteous, because righteous has been like literally my middle name. Like, anyone that's worked with me in the past going, oh yeah, she's the queen of righteousness. So for me, my intention and my focus for this conversation is really not around, like, I guess, yeah, we're calling things out, but it really is, okay, cool. Like, what is the pathway? What is the pathway? And what are the questions that we can ask to what is required? Like, that's the question that I have, is what is required for us to move forward, and what can we do collectively to create the change that is required? Because what's been brought up is, Shan's brought up the fact about, like, these unequal power dynamics. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Like, that's what I do see, in terms of, in everything, any type of injustice, it's because there's an inequality of power, which is why anyone that has privilege, this is my opinion, anyone that has privilege or wants to support people that do not have the privilege, is to empower those people with the resources so that they can have the positions of power and they can represent them and ensure that their people, again, which is all of us, but to ensure that they are not forgotten. So the power piece. And then, Matt, you've brought up, the fact that there is no regulations in the coaching industry, right? Coaching, healing, and you're right. Like, there is no regulations. Anyone can roll out of bed and say, oh my God, I had this dream. I'm a healer. I'm a coach now because I experienced something. So for me, it's like, okay, I've got to the point now where, like, I'm kind of over I'm kind of over the whole, like, this is what I'm saying, we've got to call it out, but also, cool, we've identified something and we're complaining about it. Now we get to do something about it. Like, if we lean into complaining, that is essentially us taking responsibility. This is my personal belief that if anyone is willing to complain about something, then you also have now received an invitation to be a part of the solution. So if you're going to complain to me, cool, what do we do? So I guess that's my next conversation is, do we create a board? What are we doing? Let's do something. Who wants to do something? Whether it's you guys on this call or people in the live comment, what action are we going to take? Because talking is obviously the first step. This is the awareness piece, but it's just level 1. Talking will only get us so far. What are the actions? That's my next question.
Yeah. And I want to call out exactly what you just pointed to, Jess, that, you could say, I'm just calling out what's there because I love this stuff, is that Matt had a complaint about Nicole. Like, Nicole, you're like doing this thing. And it's like, well, Nicole's like, well, tell me how I'm doing that thing. And we're not really talking to it, right? But then you're like, Jess, I want to be a part of the solution to this, not like all we do is keep in a cycle of complaints, right? I actually think that this is exactly what it is to be a new kind of leader. I think that people get stuck in the complaining, and this is a part of being right. It's like, I'm right, the leadership don't look like that. And I'm right, but it doesn't look like that. And this is it, right? And we could all say, all of us can be gurus sometimes.
Yeah.
And think we do have the answers. And then you could look at our marketing online. I've seen all of it. And you're in a Halo fucking thing, Matt. You're in bare spirits, man. Okay. Yeah. And then I do my thing, and I'm like showing up online, and I'm doing this thing, and Nicole's got the love out louders, and they're all having cuddle puddles, and there's and then Jess has got all of her coaches, and she's the mother of coaches, and Shan, I can't leave you out. You've got your women around expressing their sexuality. We've all got this. I'm saying, and this, I could be wrong because I just like to throw it out there, that actually what it is to kind of explore each other's view and go, how come you do that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's much more productive to ask the question than to be like, do I want to be heard, or am I going to be curious? Am I going to ask a question and figure out, is that for me? Is it not for me? I don't know. Anyways, that's just why I'm not projecting my opinion, because I can also get really righteous and very protective and all these things because I'm a mama bear. But my whole thing about this conversation is, what are we doing? What are we going to do? Like, I want to do something. Yes, I'm going to have another baby in 10 weeks, but I want to do something. Yes, Matt.
What's coming through for me is, Jess, I really want to acknowledge your power in how you spoke earlier of just being in your raw, real experience of what this means to you, this unraveling, the distortion being revealed, how that's affecting you, and you standing there and being in the truth of that. And I really feel like that is what we need. We need to come together and not just talk the words and speak the projections, but be in the very real pain of this separation that's happening. Because until we return to the truth of we've been fucking separate. Yeah. And because of that, we've ended up judging and hating and disregarding. And until we sit in the actual pain, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, I still feel like the person who is just out for themselves chasing money is still in as much separation as anyone else. And I'm not saying, oh, we should be empathizing with those people now, but it really is separation, whatever way, whatever corner you're coming from. And what was I going to say? And I feel like we need to just sit in the absolute grief, rage, disgust, injustice of what's actually happened before we try and idolize ourselves into forgiving and, you know, just being positive and high vibe. And it's like, but that's not the truth of what's here. The truth is we're fucking raging. We're disgusted with what we haven't been able to see. And now our bodies are waking up to this deeper layer of humanity. We need to actually take some space to just sit in the truth of that before we can move on, before we can try and repair it. And, you know, what I sensed was, instead of looking like this polished leader that can be really, you know, clean and know all the answers, we need to sit in our own humility and the truth of, we haven't seen these things. We've all played a part in the power play, in the injustice. We've all suffered in some way. And I feel like that is the grieving process that humanity is going through. Like the last words that George Floyd spoke was, "I can't breathe." And it's the same energy of COVID, you know, it takes us from the lungs. So there's something happening with our capacity to open to life, to open to each other, to connect, to feel our oneness. And I feel like we need to just fucking sit in the truth of that for a bit.
And for you, that is a part of the solution. For you, it's like, can everyone just stop pretending that they're this perfect fucking polished leader that thinks positively about each other all the time? It's like, sit in the rage of this. We're outraged at what's happening. Yeah.
And we do have to start being not judgmental, but judging and being discerning, because we're seeing these things that have been unseen, that have been so normalized and hidden from the human eye. And in order to set ourselves free, we have to start, you know, accessing our antenna and going, oh, okay, well, this doesn't feel clean. This doesn't feel pure. I'm not separating myself. I'm still going to see you through the eyes of innocence, because I've also been indoctrinated. And this is what we have to remember. This is a system that we've all been indoctrinated with. No one is free. So we really do have to stay humble here.
Yeah. I think it's funny what we just got a message to say. I think we all need some amazing positive energy vibes, which is interesting considering the conversation we're having, right? It's like, it's so hard to be with this.
But what collapses system? What burns up all that isn't true? Getting fucking angry, and not staying angry, but letting the anger rise.
Yeah, because you can see that, right?
We have to draw the line.
Can I just bring something into the table here?
Please.
So I feel like there's this sense where, yes, we need to feel the grief. We need to acknowledge it, and there is a collective grieving happening right now. Like I am grieving, like I am, and I'm sure there's many people that are as well. But I just want to kind of go back into history, and I want to give you two people in history that I just feel this is really important. So there's Malcolm X, right? And then there is Martin Luther King. So for those of you who don't know who these people are, I highly recommend you go and research. Again, it's called Google. You can do it. If you're watching this, Google. But these two people have the same mission, okay? Malcolm X and Martin Luther King have the same mission, but their messaging is very different. Very, very different. So Martin Luther King, his was whilst he did say that, you know, everyone's posting it, like a right is the unheard, is the voice of the unheard, right? But Martin Luther King was absolutely not about violence. That violence and hate and all of these things doesn't create change. It doesn't actually move the needle, and that we must also work within the system and work with the resistance to create the change. So we can't hide and acknowledge the fact that there is actually a system that we need to play in order to change it. Malcolm X, same mission, here for equality. His messaging is at all, doesn't matter what we have to do, whatever is necessary. Burn the fucking place down. Do this, whatever type of violence that looks like, right? I just want to show you the duality between two people that are on the same exact mission. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. But the pathway is very, very different. And when you look at the change that each person actually created, for me, and I appreciate the efforts of both people, but for me, when I actually look into it, because I have done this research, when I look into it and I see, well, what was the actual changes that were made that we now get to experience? One of those changes was that segregation between people on buses. That's no longer a thing because of Martin Luther King and some of the policies that he put in place. What else? What is another? I mean, there's many other things. I can't think of it right now, but I just want to also acknowledge the fact that there is a system. Do we like the system? No. Is the system working? No. And I think there is also a level at which we actually have to work with the resistance and find our way into the system so that we can make the system new and make it different, or completely somehow start a new system. Because you can start a system from scratch, right? But if you're not an actual decision maker that's going to make the changes, for me, again, I'm committed to progress. But I also want to acknowledge the fact that as much as we hate it and we want to be like, yeah, stuff the system, we cannot deny that there is a system. Yes, it's not working, but we have to work together, the people that are within the system and us maybe not in the system, to create the change.
Work in the system.
Yeah, I think it's working with the resistance so that everyone is invited to create the change. So I just felt really called to share that.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to, because I think like that's actually a really big piece of it, is like the action going forward is, you know, I've seen some of the comments as well. They're very much about, you know, moving forward, action, what changes do we make? And so I just want to speak into essence and leadership. I want to speak into the different roles that we all have. You know, like over the last 3 months, I've played a gentle role of provoker sometimes, like almost like, you know, like a little leakily tapping on, like kind of like pointing and like prodding different pieces of the system that I'm seeing, or the ways of working. I'm just kind of like, and it's been imperfect and shit, and you know, but I have to do something, and I'm like, whatever's true in this moment, I'm just going to let through, and that's what's true, you know. So there's almost been like this dinner table experience of my imperfect leadership, if that makes sense. And so there's different forms of leadership though. There is the, like, I want to see the wise women who sit on the hill with their eyes closed, tapped into the subtleties of the universe, tapped into the flows of community, tapped into the nature cycles. I want to hear them with their eyes closed, speak words, speak the truth, because they're so laid into it and they're feeling it then and there. And then I want us to like take some of those words, and I'm using the wise woman as an example, and I'm using, and then to find our own truths from this. But I just want to presence the leadership of that unique archetypal, like essence-based soul who sits there and listens and then speaks you know, and like their leadership isn't to bring through a committee or to bring through even the meeting, to the first meeting. Like their leadership is to drop into themselves and to listen and then to speak. And it's almost like they're, you know, for some of them, their life path in fully activated leadership finishes there, and they continue on, in the depths of their magic and medicine is in being in that, in the feeling and the speaking, you know. And so for me, like, I personally consider Shan's perspectives to be the frontier of leadership, because through listening to her as she picks up the subtleties and respecting and having reverence for that which I'm hearing, I've been able to break down, like, you know, 20-year-old empowering things that were once empowering to me, philosophies that were fundamental to how I led. And so the deeper I listened to the quiet voice, the deeper I listened to someone I respect, tuned into the subtleties, and then felt that in my own body and allowed myself to experience that in my own truth. And I see that which I did not see before, right? Like if I spoke to myself a year ago now, I would be saying very different things. And the reason I bring that up is because, you know, that almost like provoker touching on the fringes, naming the injustices, is because the space for the wise women to speak and be heard isn't there. And so I'm over here, I'm a father, but you're a mama bear, Jess, I'm a father bear. You know, I want to like hold community. I want us to like have the direction and be like, okay, like, how are we going to do this? I'll kind of like hold the space while we work this out together. That's my true like fundamental nature. But there's the quiet voices haven't been heard. The subtleties haven't had a space. The gentle voices haven't, like, the loud voices have been heard just increasingly over the last 2 years. It's been the more noise, the merrier sort of thing. So these other voices have been lost into the frameworks of our society. And so, you know, I just really want to, I don't want to be the one that speaks. I want to be the one that listens, feels, and then holds. And so even just in that, there's different roles in this for all of us. And maybe just you're the revolutionary. Maybe that's part of your role. You know, I know there's a big piece of that in Nicole as well, like bringing in this in a really revolutionary way. And there's different, you know, I'm not even kind of like putting you guys in those boxes, but just really just having reverence and respect for the different things that we're here to do. And yeah, for me, my mate, if there was anything I just wanted to leave today with, of all the things, it's like, I think now's the time to listen, not to like those who are making noise, maybe now's the time to listen. And those who've been sitting in silence, maybe now's the time to speak.
Yeah. I am conscious that, Nicole, we haven't heard much from you on this. And I do want to hear what you do have to say on this, right? Because I think what is showing up now is there's no one way to fulfill on something that's important. It could be listening. It could be like you read the example of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, you know, they did things differently. Everyone that I see out there is doing something so completely different. And there's nothing, for me, it's like there's nothing wrong with that. I tend to agree with what you're saying, Matt. It's like, I don't care if you earn 8 figures or you earn $8 a week. I have something to learn from you, right? I don't care if you're in the Philippines or where you are. I want to hear what you have to say. I don't care if you're showing up in your ego or you're not. I want to listen. You know, and I kind of want to go over, that's just me adding my 2 cents. But Nicole, in terms of what you're getting from this conversation, like, what do you want to add around everything that's being said?
Well, in the spirit of these last couple of shares, I guess solution. I really feel every day working towards what I see to be the solution, and actively listening to, I guess, first and foremost, my community, and working to create more diversity and inclusion within that community every single day, so that the voices that that are in there are representative of our whole world, you know, humanity. More recently, after we facilitated Meditate for Love as a movement, we identified 13 areas of reconciliation that I really see to be fundamentals and that were agreed upon within the community as fundamentals for us to work towards reconciliation in these particular areas. I won't get to them because it's quite extensive. And if we work towards reconciliation in these areas, I feel very deeply that we'll have more harmony in our world. But I think it's important to remember that even when we get to that place that we're striving for, there's going to be a new benchmark. We're in a constant process of evolution. So I guess that's what I'll add to that, is listening is a really, really important practice to always make sure that you're listening, because it's a never-ending trajectory, and taking the action. You know, at the end of the day, as Jess was speaking to, different leaders are going to see different solutions. It takes grit to pursue what you see to be the solution. Pursue what I see to be the solution every second of every day. I know that, you know, we're all imperfect. I would welcome being challenged on how committed I am to the execution of what I see to be the solution. But leaders also need to learn from each other. I think working in silos is dangerous because it lacks perspective. So the other two things I'll add to that is leaders need to learn from one another in the ways that they're doing things, to find what best practice looks like, to see what the most effective routes are for social impact, and also to listen to the community. I think where a lot of leaders go wrong is they start believing that they are informed when in fact they've stopped listening to the community that they're representing. So consistently asking. I don't think a leader should ever be too far away from the grassroots of what they're creating. This is where things can go wrong. So that's a big part of it too. And in terms of the system, every system is perfectly designed to create the outcomes it's creating. It's important to understand this. And the more you impact, the more you recognize systems are designed perfectly for the outcomes that they're creating. So when you look at that in context of our system and the system that we've been talking about in this conversation, our system's perfectly designed to create the world that it's creating right now. So if we want to change the outcomes, we need to go back to the roots of the system, and we need to actually look at how we can influence and change that. You can't create a solution with the same thinking that created the problem. And the only way to see outside of that is to have diverse conversations. I think design thinking is a really powerful thing to learn about, because it gives you a framework in which to constructively challenge ideologies and systems.
Yeah, I think we've only got 8 minutes left before, you know, this conversation will be going for an hour and 20, and it's just been awesome. What you're talking about, Nicole, is impacting the system. And I think that's also what Jess talked to as well. There's been discussions here on, you know, when we look at leadership, there's unethical practice, there's how we deal with that. Maybe we don't know how to. So, you know, how about having a conversation like we're doing now? There's calling each other out, like we called that, you know, Matt took a plunge, and it would have taken courage to call what he saw was true out with you, Nicole. Nicole listened. Jess added something about, you know, what about just making solutions? Like, this is all what it is. Like, this is how we evolve our thinking. It's getting together and having the courage to call stuff out, to go, this is what I see, and then be told, okay, but we all do things differently. And maybe all of us are actually doing the best that we think that we can right now, like every one of us on the planet. And how do we interrupt it? So it's like Nicole talks to, you know, get educated on how you can interrupt these systems, right? Using, I'm sure there are other things as well, right, that we could use. The one thing I want to talk to that we haven't, that's really like, this is, I think, missing for me in this conversation, is what are the little things that you can do as an individual daily? What are the actions that you can take that are different, that start to expand this thinking every day.
Mm.
I'd love everyone to talk to that.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
I feel like if I could advocate for something, it's to tune into your own inner knowing. Like, access your own voice before you get so consumed and overwhelmed by whatever you're absorbing outside of you through the media, social media. Like, tune into your body and check in with what you feel like. What's your senses? What's your intuition? Because that's how we reclaim our sovereignty out of this system. Instead of letting the external world tell us what we feel, what we think, what we know, we reclaim our own voice. And I feel like that's where we start opening up to deeper empathy and oneness, as we come back into the body, because that is what connects us to each other. So we're not feeling our feelings to stay in the grief and pain. We're feeling our feelings so we can access the deeper layers of the weavings that are connecting us, of what's playing out. So that is how we access greater empathy. And really, so we can tune into our unique voice that is of our unique soul essence. What do we have to bring? What do we have to say? Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed with everything outside of us. And we should be listening to that too, but we also have to tune in here.
Yeah. Beautiful. Matt, or sorry, Jess, you go. Jess, you go.
Oh, that's fine. Matt, did you want to say something?
Did I look like I did? Is my like blank face I want to say? Let me have a think. Like daily practices.
Yeah, daily practice.
Like my kind of like the growl in me. Like the growl in me wants us to fucking feel for a bit. Like I want us to not be okay. Like I want that to be just whatever the not. I don't want us to not be okay. I just want us to be the truth. Does that make sense? Like, so whatever's, like, for me, it's almost less about daily practice and it's more about, like, wherever we're at, let's actually be there for once and not try and override it and, like, you know, push high vibe and over the top or, you know, like look at Nicole and Jess today, like, just being in their pure fucking emotional truth and vulnerability and just, like, where they're at. And it's, like, I find that inspiring. You know, it's just, like, there's no pretending that's here. Like, even like my version is being like a shitty projector. That's my like that's my kind of like, I'm like, oh, here's my overactive fire again, you know, oh, there it goes. That's my version of my truth. And you know, and like that's just where I'm at as a leader right now, you know, like, so wherever we're at, we just get to be in the shittiness of that for a bit. So if I was to say anything, I'd be like, cool, like just be where you're at all the way and trust that if you're where you're at all the way, that there is a divine journey here for you as you be in that to come into all that you are even deeper and more. And that just integrates into you as you be all the way there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. Jess or Nicole, who wants to go next?
Do you mind if I'm going to chat? Sorry.
Go.
I want to speak into, I'm hearing what you're saying when it's, you know, just stop and feel. And I do want to acknowledge that every person is in whatever season they are in. They get to be in that season. Being the fire starter that I am, just remembering as well is that those seasons come to an end and that we then move to a next season. So whatever season you're at, fully be present with that season. It's perfect. If you're in a season where you're just like, this sucks, I'm angry, like, that's fine. Show me your rage, show me your tears. I love you. That is leadership. And then once you get to the next season, whatever that looks like, if you're now in a season where you want to then go and learn, that's amazing. And I acknowledge you for being fully present in that season. And again, just be really present with that is your season. And maybe you're in a season where you're like, now it's time to take action. That's the season that I'm in, which is why I do obviously have so much intensity that's coming with the messaging that I'm saying. And I do, again, think that there are there's a pathway and a different season for different times. And sometimes maybe I'll go back over to that season because I need to be in a season of feeling. But right now, for me, I am in a season of, I believe that we can do more, that we can create spaces. So for example, Love Out Loud, create spaces where people creating safe spaces. You know, this is an action. This is a tangible action that's got to support people in those different seasons. So people that are, because we can tell people, just sit and listen. And trust me, I spend 90% of my time training coaches, teaching them how to listen. Like, I don't even care about their communication skills. It's about the listening. Anyone that's worked with me is like, oh my God, please shut up about listening, Jess. It's so annoying. But we do also get to create these safe spaces where people can fully feel like it's safe for me to actually go there. Because for some people, maybe they do feel safe in their own home alone. For some people, that may be fearful. That might be a really fearful place for them to do that alone. So I think as well, like creating those safe spaces, finding those safe spaces. And as leaders, we get to create those safe spaces where they can be held, not where we go, cry, show me your rage. Like, we literally just go, what's present for you right now? And to learn from each other in each of these different circles. So that's just the one extra thing. I think those are the daily practices, but it's also the community piece. The community piece. It's really big.
Beautiful.
It's called being with what's alive. If what's alive for you is to feel, if what's alive for you is, you know, I feel that God's will is moving through me and I'm going to create this thing. But we have to be embodied and we have to be grounded in order to get that clear message. We have to be in the soul. So I feel like for a lot of humanity, we haven't been in the soul, we haven't been in the body. So we cannot be that vessel for good. So my 2 cents is I'm really feeling that that's what's required right now.
Yeah. Beautiful. And Nicole?
I would say that being of service to people teaches you all of the above. I really loved what you just shared, Jess. Thank you for that. I feel like being in service teaches you how to listen, teaches you how to transcend the self, teaches you how to prioritize, teaches you how to take action where required. So if that's something you've never done, I feel like that is a really amazing place to begin in starting to awaken the self, even if it's volunteer work for a few hours a week. Or it could be something, you know, much more, anything in between. I think the path of service is a powerful teacher.
Yeah, beautiful. And of course, I'm going to add mine as a daily practice. And for me, you know, pretty much everything everyone said, like what you said, Jess, around letting all the spaces be the spaces the way that they are, and that you can move through different spaces depending on what season you're in, really. And wherever you are is where you are, and letting yourself fully be seen daily, just where you are, to me is a big practice of leadership. Whether it's crying because you really are impacted by what's happening in the world, or whether it's experiencing joy, allow yourself to be there. And same with what everyone's saying are awesome daily practices. One of the ones I'd add is that I want to see a practice where someone comes to you or to me and does, hey, this thing's happening in the world and I don't like it. This person did this thing. And you go, I've got your back fully. I want you to go and talk to them about it, not me. I want you to go to the person, what I call the source of what happened, and I want you to have that conversation that you're having with me, with them. And if that doesn't work, come back and we'll see what's next. You know, I want to see that as a daily practice. I want to see a daily practice of the person in front of you saying something and it doesn't work and you sharing it. A daily practice of being open to go, what I'm feeling right now, what I think and what I need is okay for me to communicate. And I don't have to hide or be ashamed of any of it, even if I try to communicate it and it's all a mess. I want people to practice being human a lot more than we currently do. So I just wanted to add that. Is there anything just finally that anyone would like to say?
I think the final thing that I want to say, because I know that there's a lot of coaches that are going to be watching this, is there is, and again, this is my opinion, there is this, of course, like we want to be in flow, and like like one of my highest goals in life is to live life in a constant state of prayer, okay, which is feeling that beautiful state of prayer. But there are some actions as leaders that we have to take that we're not going to enjoy. So if we want to create impact and social change in these things, we're going to have to ask those people that need the help what is required. And if the task required is not something that you want to do, but it's what's required, then I really encourage you and I implore you to ask yourself, are you willing to do what's required? Or are you just willing to do what's going to feel good for you? That's the last thing that I want people to think about.
Oh my God, I second that.
I've got a piece. I'm gonna speak to myself 5 years ago.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, brother, stop modeling other people. Stop trying to meet the market and try and meet yourself. You're surrounded by a world that is both empowering and deeply distorted. And when you learn to listen deeper than you've ever listened before, when you learn to actually hear the whispers of the universe, the whispers that come through the subtleties of another human, the whispers that come through nature itself, when you learn to truly listen and make meaning and allow divine meaning to come through these whispers, then you will come into a space where you're also hearing the whispers of the truth of that which you are, and that is your life path. So let that be your guide. Let that be your guide. And yes, the path, brother, is to surrender into yourself rather than to make yourself or to grow into yourself or to push yourself into something that you're not. Yes, you have to surrender, brother, into that which you are, but it's a case of releasing rather than owning or claiming, or that's the truth of your past, my brother.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And is there anything else? Nicole, did you want to add anything on this note?
No, just thank you all, and thank you to all of the viewers.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone that tuned into this conversation. I don't want this to be the only one we ever have, to be honest. I would love to see this happen more. And I just want to honor you, Jess, for creating this opportunity and having the courage, because I wanted to, I just didn't do it. I had the thought, I just didn't take the action because I was afraid to. And so I just want to honor you for having the courage to do that, because I know that would have taken something for you to try and work out how to do that. There were things.
It didn't take courage.
That's right. You did. You did say it didn't take courage. So good for you.
I just fully surrender. I'm like, this conversation wants to happen. This is not our conversation. This conversation just wants to be heard. And this is just a platform where it just, again, like the leadership, a leader is someone that guides, and a ship is a vessel. We're all just a bunch of vessels. And we just happen to be guiding a few people. And for me, that's what's happening here, is we're just the vessel for this message.
And I want to thank you for doing it, and that you did take that action. You listened and you just took it. And I know how busy you are. You've got loads of kids. You're pregnant. You run a coaching business. So I appreciate it. You, like you said, you didn't have time for this, but you made it happen because it needed to happen. So thank you. And thank you, all of you, for being a part of this and being people that wanted to have a conversation like this. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Shan. Thanks, Nicole, for taking time out of your day, because I know all of you, you've all got things on that you could have been anywhere else, but you're here to have this conversation. So let's keep edging this forward and see what we can create. So much love to you all. Everyone that tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, have a lovely afternoon. I'll see you guys again.
Bye.